It's getting worse, not being able to find things. It's horrible. Sure, I've got it somewhere. The last time, I introduced you to my great hero, Paul du Chaillu, his travels. This is the first illustration of a gorilla. In 1855, 25 years old, du Chaillu left for the unknown interior of Gabun and became the first white man ever to see a gorilla and the pygmies, and later, the cannibal practices of these people. Right. In the US and Europe, his books became bestsellers. People loved his stories about witchcraft and superstition. So I went all the way and got myself a fetish and left well protected for the deep forest, visiting the Fan, a notorious tribe of man-eating warriors. Presently, we passed a woman who solved all doubt. She bore with her a piece of the thigh of a human body, just as we should go to market and carry thence a roast or steak. We met the grandchildren of du Chaillu's cannibals, who weren't very eager to reveal the stories of their grandfathers. Much to our surprise, we experienced 160 years after du Chaillu, a country still full of superstition and the old bloody rituals.
On a coupé la langue, on a enlevé les yeux, on a coupé le sexe. Ils ont arraché, ils ont coupé la langue, ils ont coupé les lèvres, ils ont enlevé les yeux, ils ont coupé les oreilles.
Today's horror stories proved to be still as cruel as those in du Chaillu's days.
Nous sommes les cannibales. Nous mangeons. La nuit, on mange. La journée, on mange. Nous mangeons la chair humaine. C'est la meilleure viande du monde.
This episode, we'll continue our search for du Chaillu, focusing mainly on the king of the forest. I was born in the wrong century. That's what my friends tell me, and I'm afraid they're right. I should have lived in the 19th century, when most of the world still had to be discovered. I should have been one of those brave men who left the safety and warmth of their homes to explore the blank areas on the globe, those places where no white man had ever set foot. Without those men, the world would not be as it is today. Well, when we get to the top of this mountain, I'll tell you how du Chaillu travelled and how difficult it was for him. Well, this is the way we do it now. This is making a new road up in the mountains, the forest mountains of Gabun. Now, I'm trying to get an idea of what it was like to travel in du Chaillu's time. And the main point to notice on his map here is the white spaces. They knew nothing, or almost nothing. And look, here he's labelled Mashobo, question mark, said to be cannibals, and then a whole expanse of land is labelled gorilla country. Anyway, so different nowadays, all mapped, and when we want a new road, we just send in a bulldozer, whereas he had to cut his way, or really mark his way in the primary jungle with machetes, day after day, day after day, sometimes for more than a year. Quite something, really. Between 1855 and 1865, du Chaillu made 2 long expeditions deep into the interior. Without much of a scientific background, he succeeded in making astonishing discoveries. Around the same time Darwin shocked the religious world with his evolution theory, du Chaillu shipped a gorilla home, adding to the revolutionary idea that man and ape were linked much closer than the church liked them to be. Well, we're about to enter deep primary forest, which is very exciting because this area, see, it really has not changed. This one piece of land, the Great African Equatorial Belt, just stayed exactly where it is now when Gondwana land broke up. So everywhere here has had such a long time to evolve different species, and of course I think the great glory of this area is, well, it's the great apes. We evolved here, the gorilla evolved here, and if we're very, very lucky, we're going to see Du Chaillu's hero, the lowland gorilla. In both the States and Europe, his books became bestsellers. Everybody wanted to have one. But while his readers loved him, some scientists called him a liar. It couldn't be true that Du Chaillu had really seen what he described. We followed the traces and presently came to the footprints of the so long desired animal. It was the first time I had ever seen these footprints, and my sensations were indescribable. Here was I now, it seemed, on the point of meeting face to face that monster of whose ferocity, strength and cunning the natives had told me so much, an animal scarce known to the civilized world, and which no white man before had hunted. My heart beat till I feared its loud pulsations would alarm the gorilla, and my feelings were really excited to a painful degree. By the tracks, it was easy to know that there must have been several gorillas in company. We prepared at once to follow them. Really? One should use leaves, but old men. We're off.
We leave.
We're leaving. Yes.
On doit marcher lentement, bon. Parler aussi à voix basse pour éviter que les espèces nous attendent en distance. Voilà, donc si on est sur la forêt, on doit éviter de piétiner les petites branches.
Oui.
Parce que ça, quand ça se casse brutalement, c'est qu'ils attendent en distance. Donc, c'est pas interdit de parler, mais juste à voix basse. Donc, n'hésitez pas de questions. S'il y a des questions, il faut poser des questions comme assez d'eau.
Ah, merci. Oh, c'est nécessaire. Merci, merci. And I'm whispering because this area, I haven't been in such a rich place. Just the droppings of buffalo have obviously come here. Look, there's plenty of Weetabix for buffalo. And then elephant droppings and the droppings of an antelope I've never seen. Ah, amazing. Oh, this is really wonderful because it's the first time I met these. In my memory, they've become huge because they bite like crazy. These are actually the real thing. These are driver ants on the move. Now, a community of driver ants, it comes in at around 22 million individuals, and there are 5 sizes of ants. And that is so that you can clear out all the food in the area completely. The little ones go for the little insects, and then it builds up. In my imagination, of course, the ones that went for me about this big. But actually, you can see the soldiers. They were soldiers. You can see the soldiers going in the column. These columns stretch all over the place. And I got back to this little filthy hut, and over the wall, the outside wall, there was a square for the window. And it was black, absolutely black and flowing, these ants coming over the windowsill, unstopping. And then got to the floor and decided this is interesting, and split into columns and they really are like the army. Stripe ranks, and one column right up the wall, up the mud wall, and the other one up that side, and into the roof. You hear this rustling as everything's trying to get away. They really do clean your house up. But there's one problem with that. We had supper tethered there, I'm afraid. A chicken on a leash. A chicken on a leash. And, couldn't get away. When I came in there it was, and you just heard a ball of ants. You couldn't see anything else. And the chicken was trying to move. And when they'd finished, there was nothing on that chicken. It was as if it had been prepared as a laboratory specimen. It was absolutely picked clean. Suddenly, as we were yet creeping along, in a silence which made a heavy breath seem loud and distinct, the woods were at once filled with the tremendous barking roar of the gorilla. Then the underbrush swayed rapidly just ahead, and presently before us stood an immense male gorilla. He had gone through the jungle on all fours, but when he saw our party, he erected himself and looked us boldly in the face. He stood about a dozen yards from us, and was a sight I think I shall never forget.
Les fruits là sont mangés par les hommes. Que ce soit les chimps, les gorilles, à vrai dire tous les singes en général, que ce soit les mandarines, c'est bouffé par tout le monde. C'est bouffé par les grands singes et les petites espèces. Voilà, donc
c'est bon.
Oui, c'est dans la famille des Melicia agrifonia. Donc c'est vraiment sucré et que vous pouvez goûter. Vous pouvez faire goûter. C'est vraiment ça, une sucrerie vraiment, vraiment concentrée. On va faire goûter. Tu veux encore?
Oh, really good.
The biggest difference between Chaillu and us is that he almost killed every animal he
Yes.
met.
Yes,
Elephants, gorillas.
I know, and it's wonderful to be us now. But it was, he had to do that because that was the only way to prove that he actually had seen them, and that was the only way to add to scientific knowledge at the time. I mean, the saying then was, what's hit is history, what's missed is mystery. Just seen a gorilla. Despite all the noise we were making, I think he was curious.
Tu es sûr que tu étais un cueilli? Ouais.
When they get very old, then a younger male comes and there's an actual fight, which is very rare with gorillas, and the old man gets thrown out. And he wanders through the jungle all alone and dies of grief. Horrible. But then that's what happens to most of us when we haven't got old. The old gorilla male keeps following the group where he himself once was the boss. He keeps a safe distance in order not to disturb the new leader. But sometimes, our guides tell us, sometimes one of his old girlfriends feels sorry for him and leaves the group in secret just to accompany her old man for old time's sake. Anyhow, the big ape doesn't show up anymore, so we decide to leave and try our luck somewhere else. It took du Chaillu weeks before he saw one, so I shouldn't complain. Let's head for Dosala, a shaky 6-hour drive from here through the bush. There, they promise us, we might see plenty of gorillas. If all goes well, we'll arrive there in the early morning. Well, they've been studying gorillas here for 10 years, and if anybody knows where the gorillas are, it should be these people. Bonjour, madame.
Bonjour.
Redmond O'Hanlon. Hi.
Shiman, hi.
Shiman.
Nice to meet you,
Wonderful.
Redmond.
And you are going to guide us?
Yes. We have something like 1 or 2 hours walking before finding gorillas today.
Ah.
Serge, tu disais? Serge.
So where are we going to search now?
Now we communicate in radio with someone who observes group gentil around the river.
Pygmäen is very strict with us. The gorillas are not used to an invasion of white men. So it's only me, the cameraman and the soundman who are allowed to join her. 2 scouts are trying to locate the group. They brief us by radio.
Ok, maintenant, est-ce que tu as des traces fraîches là-bas?
Isn't it dangerous?
Well, I'm quite sure it's not at all if you don't look directly at a gorilla, even a female.
What do you mean you don't look directly?
Well, you must never make proper eye contact, always like that. Because the eye contact is a real threat in gorilla culture. So he's responding, if you look straight at him, to your aggression. But they always stop just 5-6 feet away at a minimum. But then, very difficult for you when this enormous animal is charging you to think that it's all right, he's fubsy really and he's going to stop.
Well, we better go because we have to catch him before it's getting late.
Yes.
Yeah, can you see this? It's like this now. And this morning it was like this. So that means someone walked on like this. And we suppose it should be gorillas.
Parce que je veux sentir un peu
L'odeur. On ne peut plus avancer, ils sont juste devant nous, mais dans la forêt.
Oui, ok.
Prenez-la.
Ils sont ici.
Ok.
gorillas.
We should make some noises, some special noises to make them feel quite calm. That make them feel calm. Yes. So without 2 or 3 sounds, something like. And so calm down, calm down.
Is he close? Yeah, really, really close. He's moving in here. Chaillu calls him king of the forest. He's right there. Well, and Chaillu says that he feels bad because when the gorillas are running away from him, a group of gorillas, they seem exactly like human beings, which is an odd thing to say when you imagine gorillas moving on all fours. But actually, they move sort of half upright because their arms are so long, and they do look remarkably like human beings. I suddenly realized that. We were lucky enough to see those 3 females with an infant, and 1 female had a baby, scooting across a dirt forest track, which again I'm not used to, but it was wonderful because you could see everything. You know, normally you're lucky if you see a head or an arm and a wonderful hand. You never see the whole animal in jungle like this, but there they were, right across the road. That's extraordinary.
On the 25th, I got a second young gorilla. This time, I was accessory to its capture. We were walking along in silence when I heard a cry and presently saw before me a female gorilla with a tiny baby gorilla hanging to her breast and sucking. The mother was stroking the little one and looking fondly down at it, and the scene was so pretty and touching that I held my fire and considered, like a soft-hearted fellow, whether I had not better leave them in peace. Before I could make up my mind, however, my hunter fired and killed the mother, who fell without a struggle. The mother fell, but the baby clung to her and, with pitiful cries, endeavored to attract her attention. I came up, and when it saw me, it hid its poor little head in its mother's breast. It could neither walk nor bite, so we could easily manage it, and I carried it while the men bore the mother on a pole. When we got to the village, another scene ensued. The men put the body down, and I set the little fellow near. As soon as he saw his mother, he crawled to her and threw himself on her breast. He did not find his accustomed nourishment, and I saw that he perceived something was the matter with the old one. He crawled over her body, smelt at it, and gave utterance, from time to time, to a plaintive cry, "Hoo, hoo, hoo," which touched my heart. Du Chaillu says that baby gorillas, all gorillas, are completely untamable. Well, that's not quite right. I had a baby gorilla in the Congo, and exactly the same story as his, that his mother had been killed in front of it and then cut up and eaten. But mine, he lived a long time, really, for a saved gorilla. I loved him. If you love them, they love you. It's simple. I used to jiggle him up and down, and you kiss him on top of his head, little brown bit, and he smelt of fresh grass just there, and he would do this, which I think is a gorilla smile, and he'd sleep on my chest all night. Tremendous grip he had, and very fast breathing all night long. And we walked around, well, together. Couldn't be any other way because I couldn't detach his arms. He had diarrhea, I had diarrhea. We slept wrapped up in a tarpaulin together. And we bonded, I'm afraid. And I got him out eventually down to Brazzaville to an orphanage that Aspinall was setting up. And he was the first little gorilla in there. They are so human. They get all our diseases, and they are also so emotional. And he just could not take the fact that lots of other baby gorillas who were also traumatized came into the orphanage after him. He was the first one in there. And he died of grief and disturbance. He actually died of a burst ulcer. But I'd sent him postcards and nappies and did the best I could. Anyway, I was... Oh, yeah, and here he is. See, he's not very big, but he was kinder to me than anybody else in the Congo. And here, oh, there he is. And then this is a picture of when we were reunited, when I finally got back down to Brazzaville. See, it's a very, very affectionate little thing. Anyway, I had to leave, and probably going fairly crazy by then, because I really asked absolutely everybody, why can't I take this gorilla back to England? You know, my friend. No. Anyway, I heard a bit later that he died, and it really, really upset me. And I was caught speeding and going into London. Anyhow, when the court case came up, I was the last in the day. Everyone was tired in this court. And you have three magistrates, and the eldest one said, "And Mr. O'Hanlon, have you any excuses, any mitigating circumstances?" And I said, "Well, yes, my lord, there really was, because that morning I just heard that the gorilla I slept with in the Congo had died." And the policeman at the back started it. He collapsed. He couldn't help it. He began to laugh, and there was uproar. And the magistrate actually used that hammer thing. Bang, bang. Silence in the court. He said, "It's the most ridiculous excuse I've ever heard." And then, yeah, I got off with a £30 fine, and other poor people were being sent down to prison for parking on double yellow lines. It was a stupid story. Sorry, but... I'm going to change the forest of Gabun for the New York jungle. Du Chaillu's discovery of the gorilla caused great excitement here. Everybody wanted to see the explorer and read his books. It's hard to believe that today nobody seems to remember him. What happened? Where did it go wrong? And why did some scientists accuse him of making things up? Was it just jealousy? Or was there something else?
Now I wonder, look, that's got a globe on top. I suppose that symbolises great traveller, I don't know. Ah, look at that, that's it, fantastic. Paul B. Du Chaillu, author and African explorer, born in Louisiana died at St. Petersburg. Maybe that's true. Isn't it wonderful? That's a big tribute.
Hello. I'm Susan.
Ah, wonderful.
I'm the historian for the cemetery. This is his original interment order. And as you can see, on Wednesday, June 24th, 1903, we get the call that he's going to be buried here. We know that he dies April 29th, 1903, of apoplexy.
Wow.
So we know
So
that
heart attack, really? Yeah.
heart attack, stroke
Yeah.
in St. Petersburg, Russia. We know the size of the casket, that he's age 64,
Oh, my age.
and that the train is coming up, and so there's the details there. Now this other document is what's called a lot card. For every lot in the cemetery, we have a diagram with the dimensions,
I've
where
never
the
seen one of
monument
these
is,
before.
and of course it tells us again that's his interment number. So he was the 62,000th person that we bury here. But here are some copies of these for you, so that as you write about him, you've got the copies of the original documents.
Oh, thank you. That's
All
really
right?
special.
You are welcome.
Thank you very much.
All right?
Yes.
I decide to linger on a bit at the cemetery. There still are some other mysteries about Du Chaillu that remain unsolved. Why was he so secretive about his family background? Was he hiding something? I decide to call Ray Conniff and ask him to come over to the cemetery. For his book, The Species Seekers, Conniff went through all the archives, trying to find out if Du Chaillu had ever lied.
This lie right here, he was often accused, Du Chaillu, of being a liar, but this is a lie. He was not born in Louisiana.
Oh, wow. What?
He was born on the island of Réunion in the Indian Ocean, east of Madagascar, and his father was a French merchant and a slave owner.
Slave owner?
Yes, and his mother was not his father's wife, but a woman of mixed race. And so he would have been, in that time, a quadroon.
A quadroon. Du Chaillu was a quadroon, someone who is 1/4 black and 3/4 white. If I look at his pictures, I can't see it. It might seem irrelevant to us, but don't forget, here we're talking 1861. It would take 2 more years before slavery was officially abolished.
Well, you know the Academy of Natural Sciences in Philadelphia, which financed, or was supposed to finance, his big expedition to Africa in the 1850s. That was also the center of scientific racism in America at that time. There was a researcher there named George Ord, and he wrote a letter at the height of this controversy in which he said that people at the Academy suspected Paul Du Chaillu of being of spurious birth, spurious origins, kind of a curious phrase. We're all of spurious origin in some way, aren't we? But in any case, he also talked about his negroid features, and he talked about his skull shape. You know, they were very interested in skull shape as a defining racial thing, and a defining trait revealing your intelligence. And you know, it basically said that if he is a Negro, that explains his tendency to tell lies, because they are such romantic people and always fibbing about one thing or another. Mixed race was really on people's minds.
So that makes sense. Du Chaillu wasn't 100% white, and for some in those days it was impossible that a man partly Negro could be able to make the great discoveries he did. But Du Chaillu didn't seem intimidated at all. He just decided to prove, once again, that he was right.
So why all these horrible people saying these dreadful things to him? And he'd achieved so much. Why did he carry on?
Well, I think
Most people would just retire hurt.
Yeah, in fact, he was hurt, deeply hurt, and yet he also knew that he had done what he said he had done. He had exaggerated certain things. He hadn't given credit to certain people for things that he should have given credit. But this fact of the trip, of seeing these animals, that was all true, and seeing things that no one else had seen. And also, he was insecure. He was insecure because of his uncertain or spurious birth. He was insecure because he didn't have an education. And so when all these people were challenging him, I think that just got to something stubborn in his being. And he said, look, I'm going to prove you wrong. And instead of fading away, he actually made an expedition to go back to Africa, and then to go into the forest and gather some of the specimens that he had said were there and bring them back. And he did, and that takes a lot of nerve, to be attacked by the entire scientific establishment, to be a kid, basically, a 25-year-old, whatever he was at the time, and to say, I'm going to go back and show that I'm right and you're wrong. That's a great thing.
That second trip in 1863 proved Du Chaillu had been right in everything he'd said and wrote. Everything but one thing. He described the gorilla as a ferocious, aggressive, man-eating monster. Nearly 6 feet high, with immense body, huge chest, and great muscular arms, with fiercely glaring large deep grey eyes and a hellish expression of face, which seemed to me like some nightmare vision. Thus stood before us this king of the African forest. He advanced a few steps, then stopped to utter that hideous roar again. Advanced again, and finally stopped when at a distance of about 6 yards from us. And here, just as he began another of his roars, beating his breast in rage, we fired and killed him. In reality, the gorilla is a rather friendly vegetarian, but Du Chaillu's description of the animal as a fearful monster lived on long after his death. In 1933, the authors of the King Kong movie said they were inspired by Du Chaillu. Hey, this is a famous one. There's King Kong. King Kong standing on the Twin Towers. It's the original poster, and the owner of the shop must have paid a fortune to get hold of it.
And right after 9/11 occurred, I was looking at an auction that was coming up, and they were auctioning off the original painting for the King Kong movie, 1976 remake. I saw this image and I remembered it. It was such a huge part of my childhood. Lunchboxes, posters, everything had this image of King Kong on the Twin Towers. 9/11 had just occurred, and I knew that I had to have this piece. And I went to an auction, and I sat in the back of the room. I waited till everybody was finished bidding, and I just kept bidding and bidding and bidding, and I got the piece. And I'm very happy to say I own it with my partner, and we have it hanging in our gallery here in New York City. And every day it means a lot to me because of my childhood. It also means a lot to have a keepsake from, obviously, the tragedy of 9/11.
So was the writer Rice Burroughs, who was drawing unmistakably on Du Chaillu's descriptions of the Gabonese jungle when, in 1912, he created that other cult hero.
Wow. Tarzan.
Thank you so much for the purchase, and enjoy them. Make sure you read them. It's really a pleasure.
My pleasure.
Don't tell anybody, but yes, this is me, Redmond O'Hanlon, leaving a New York building with 3 kilos of Tarzan comics in my suitcase. I'm going to take my Tarzan comics to Bob Peck in Philadelphia. He studied Du Chaillu for more than 20 years. Maybe he knows more about the link between Tarzan's creator Rice Burroughs and Paul Du Chaillu.
Now, I want to show you something.
What do you think?
Wonderful. Classics. Look at them all. And I think what Edgar Rice Burroughs certainly must have picked up from Du Chaillu was not only the description of life in West Africa, but even the details. I think the beating of the chest and the great cry of Tarzan is all based on those early descriptions of the gorilla himself. So it's sort of the primal scream, if you will, the basis for all of this. Are we man or are we beast?
Yes.
He in a way becomes like Tarzan, in that he's going into the wilderness and bringing with him culture from the West. It's a blurry line. And then, of course, the King Kong movies, no doubt that those were influenced by Du Chaillu. And is it the gentle giant or the ferocious one?
Yes.
But this was Du Chaillu's were the only books available about life in West Africa.
Yes.
And so for an author like this, who had no scientific training, if he wanted to get any degree of atmosphere accuracy, that would be his reference.
Bob Peck works for the Academy of Natural Science, the institute that paid for Du Chaillu's travel expenses then, but at the same time mistrusted him because his mother was half black.
Now, these bats,
These
all,
are Du Chaillu's.
all three of these are Du Chaillu bats. And you can see his original labels here from West Africa.
Wow.
Here. This.
Oh, the otter that no one believed him, or grey.
People began to doubt him just for the sake of doubting him and throw cold water on it. And it was so hard to prove the negative. You know, if he'd been discredited, how could he then convince people it was true? For many other explorers, they're given the benefit of the doubt, and they were usually believed until proven otherwise.
Yeah.
But once a shred of doubt had been placed in the minds of the public,
Poor guy.
all came into question.
But here's the proof.
Now this colobus monkey
It's a black colobus.
is Du Chaillu's specimen.
That's what?
And this is the skull we extracted from the animal.
But that's incredible because they're quite common.
And it's, yes, unusual that he would have been the first to bring it back.
Well, it's got some nightjars in it.
And the colors here still bright on the breast. These were described in the scientific literature, often in the Academy's own journal, which began in 1817. Du Chaillu would send these birds to the Academy from Africa, from his first trip particularly. Even this, look at this tiny little one. It's almost the size of a mouse.
I think he describes that.
And he does in his book.
Yeah.
So it's terrific to see the living proof, well, not quite living, I guess.
No, but I know what you mean.
But here, smaller ones that were collected by Du Chaillu. This group of bush babies, and they are still in the mounts that they were.
They are so difficult to collect.
I wonder if Paul Du Chaillu, while traversing the jungle, expected people at home to discredit him after his return. Would he have considered the possibility of being mistrusted because of his family background? I think he definitely did. That's why he hid his mixed background till the end.
Well, Du Chaillu wanted to be as white as possible. He really wanted to be one of them. And here's a startling passage from Volume 2 of his great work on West Africa. I believe that the Negro may become a more useful member of mankind than he is at present, that he may be raised to a higher standard, but that, if left to himself, he will soon fall back into barbarism. In his own country, the efforts of the missionaries for hundreds of years have had no effect. The missionary goes away, and the people relapse into barbarism. We ought therefore to be kind to him and try to elevate him. That he will disappear in time from his land, I have very little doubt, and that he will follow, in the course of time, the inferior races who have preceded him. So let us write his history. Well, I wonder what President Obama would make of that.
Du Chaillu knew that as a child of a half-black mother, he would have no chance at all. He knew that at the same academy that paid for his expenses, people were trying to prove the inferiority of the black race. People like Henry George Morton, for instance, who collected thousands of human skulls to prove his case.
What Morton did, he measured all of these. He had the morphometrics worked out, so how wide, how long, and so on. And one of the metrics that he used was cranial capacity, which was interpreted at the time, misinterpreted at the time, to also mean intelligence.
Yes.
And therein lies the tragic flaw. It doesn't. It really has nothing to do with intelligence. But Morton was giving very scientific and accurate accounts that this group of people had this much cranial capacity, and this group had less. And so those who were the apologists for slavery and racism could say, well, look, there's a hierarchy here, and these black races are smaller cranial capacity, therefore less intelligent.
And this is just not true.
It certainly isn't true.
Chaillu himself may have been a victim of this kind of prejudice.
I think there were lots of reasons people were trying to discredit Chaillu. He was not, certainly not from a establishment family. His background was questionable. He was not an intellectual. He'd not been trained in college. He was pretty much an outsider. And I think those who were part of the scientific establishment at the time found it very threatening that someone like this could find new species, get a lot of attention, publish a very popular book, go in a lecture circuit and attract thousands of people, while they, who presumably had much greater knowledge, were beavering away in the back room and getting absolutely no credit or attention.
So jealousy.
I think it was jealousy, and I think they pulled out everything they could possibly throw at him to try to discredit him, call him a charlatan, call him partly Negroid, if that is what it took to undercut his credibility.
Beautiful little passage I want to read to you. It's Chaillu saying farewell after writing this wonderful book, I think. Marvelous, full of life. All writers feel this, but he got more right to feel this than anyone else, I think. The long and tedious labor of preparing this book for the press leaves me with the conviction that it is much easier to hunt gorillas than to write about them, to explore new countries than to describe them. During the 20 months which I have passed in the process of writing out my journals since my return to the United States, I have often wished myself back in my African wilds. I can only hope that the reader, when he closes the book, will not think this labor wasted. And with this hope, I bid him a friendly farewell. London, April 30th, 1861. Goodbye.